Hey there, I'm here at the stateside at the Paramount Theatre, and we're diving into the wild, hilarious world of Texas theater legend and Lockhart local, Jaston Williams. His new show, High Heels and Cowboy Boots, is packed with outrageous stories from Safeway drug bust to the baton twirler that had terrible aim. He's best known for the play Greater Tuna. Jaston takes us behind the scenes of his theatrical life, proving that showbiz is just as unpredictable as small-town Texas. So get ready for laughs, chaos, and a touch of discomfort.
It's called High Heels and Cowboy Boots, and which I spent the last 3.5 decades of my life wearing on stage. You know, my father one time, I was so worried about my father when he first saw the Greater Tuna plays because I played a number of female characters, and I thought, he may not hold up well under this. You know, he's an old West Texas farmer. He came backstage and said, "What'd you think?" And he said, "You should have put that dress on 10 years ago." So as long as you're making money, you're a success. So, but it just seemed like the appropriate title. I hadn't been on the stage of the state for over a year, I guess. I usually do one show a year here. And I hadn't done anything in quite a while, and I missed it. And so I pulled some material, some pieces that I already knew. I created some new work. I have one of my favorite pieces ever, and it's a big piece, was about my experience being a Boy Scout and a Cub Scout. And our scout troop, they did not give merit badges for what we were good at. In fact, I think they finally banished us from the legal scout camp. I think we were asked to take a couple of years off, but that's fine with us. We had a gambling tent, you know. So, and I had never done that piece for whatever reasons. I had never done that piece in Austin. I'm not sure how that fell. And I thought, I need to put that piece in. And then there were other pieces. And then there's a whole section where I talk about Joe Sears, because I thought when we wrote Greater Tuna, you know, which is a 2-person satire, multiple characters, I thought it would run at the most for 6 months, you know, in different little places in Texas. We ran for 3.5 decades. 3.5 decades, and at the end of it, we were the longest running comedy team in the country, you know. We did an HBO version, had a real good time. I tell you though, Joe and I are stage actors. We've done film, we've done all of that, but there is something honorable about going out and doing it over and over and over. And, you know, one thing I like about the theater is that, you know, you may have a really great matinee. Well, you got to do it again a few hours later. And I love that. It's like being an athlete. And I'm an old athlete now, you know. I can't do a lot of the physical things that I used to do, and but I've found other ways of compensating for that. And again, the whole sections about Joe and I are the only reason this play was a hit is because Joe and I were friends for a decade before we ever wrote it. We had this rock-solid friendship. We had laughed for a decade, just among ourselves. And then we decided to put it on stage, and who knew? But it was a hit because we were so tight. And even the success we had of Broadway and HBO and off-Broadway and all the major theaters in the country, practically, that couldn't kill the friendship eventually. It strained it. It strained it for a while, but it couldn't kill it. And now Joe, I talk to Joe 2-3 times a week at least. And the deal is we have to make each other laugh. And this isn't a funny time. It's not a funny time in America, and it's important for people to laugh. And that's another reason I wanted to do this. Well, Lockhart has some amazing characters. You know, I got my windshield wipers changed yesterday at the Walmart, and the woman who changed them for me was one of the funniest, most likable. You know, it took 20 minutes because we were telling jokes back and forth, you know, and kind of a pistol-packing mama, you know, but she knew how to get those. She knew how to get them on. And I said, can I tip you? She said, you're not supposed to. I said, well, oops, I dropped a $20 bill. So, but yeah, Lockhart has a whole lot of personality. There was one group that used to gather for breakfast at one of the places I used to eat at. I've got my favorite breakfast place now, but they were a pretty right-wing bunch. They were friendly to me because they'd seen my shows, but it was a little iffy. And I cracked a joke one day that I wanted to run for Lockhart School Board on a platform of corporal punishment for bad parents. That you just bring that bad parent in and beat the hell out of them at the pep rally. They were all like, we'll vote for you. I thought, you have to be careful when you're joking. But they thought that is a great idea. So, yeah, well, one of the things I talk about with Joe that a lot of people don't know is Joe and I are both from interracial families. We both raised children that were not of our race. My child is Asian. I adopted him in China. Joe never legally adopted, but practically adopted the daughter of a friend of his. She's Hispanic. And we got a take on racism that only comes from having children you love go through that kind of stuff. And I think racism is the scourge of this nation. And it's part of my job to point that out, and Joe's. And that's it. People come around. Sometimes. Some people are not going to come around. Some people are very, very comfortable with their hatred and their bigotry. But most people, if you can make them laugh and let them see your humanity, that was one of the things of we wanted to raise our son in a small town. That's one reason we moved to Lockhart. I'd grown up in small towns. And I liked the atmosphere. I felt safer. And there are people who probably wouldn't agree with me on very much other than the fact that they agreed with the way I raised my child. That what we expected of him, the traditional Texas values of thank you, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, all of that, that's our boy. He's as Chinese as the day is long, but he's got traditional, kind, general, polite Texas values. And people would see that. So our son lightened the way for us in many ways. People saw how we raised the boy and they decided they liked us. So there you go.